When it comes to Blue Beetle at the box office, Warner Brothers is desperately hoping that they can break the DC curse. The last 3 movies that have been released for DC, Black Adam, Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods, and The Flash, have been massive flops and failures, costing them hundreds of millions of dollars. And the early projections for Blue Beetle was going to be more of the same. Blue Beetle already on track to be another domestic box office flop for DC and Warner Brothers Discovery. Well, we finally have the first actual real numbers from Blue Beetle after the Thursday previews, and it's not looking very good. Box office, Blue Beetle takes flight with 3.3 million in previews. Now, sitting there on its own, 3.3 million in Thursday previews, what does that number mean? Well, you got to compare it to everything else. Not only recent releases, but recent DC releases. Things like Shazam 2, things like The Flash. And spoiler alert, it doesn't look good. Blue Beetle grosses 3.3 million in domestic previews. The Flash, in comparison, made 9.7 million. So you're looking at something that's basically debuting to a third of The Flash. Now, to be fair, let's add a little context. There should have been more hype for The Flash. It had a miserable opening. It was like a $55 million opening weekend for The Flash. It should have been bigger. There should have been more hype surrounding Michael Keaton's return, all this stuff, but DC's just turned so many people off that the hype wasn't there. Blue Beetle, I don't think would have come in with that same level of hype or expectation, even if it didn't live up to those standards. So, that's some of it. But the fact that it's below Shazam 2 should be very, very worrying, because right now, Blue Beetle's tracking right with Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods. And unfortunately for them, if that's how this movie ends up in that same level, it's going to be a $100 million failure for this company. Take a look at this. This is some more comparisons right here. Blue Beetle grossed 3.3 million Thursday previews over Free Guy's 2.2 and Jungle Cruise's 2.7 million, Haunted Mansion's 3.1 million, and Meg 2's 3.2 million. On par with Shazam Fury of the Gods 3.4 and under Birds of Prey 4 million. A $28 to $33 million 3-day opening could be in the cards. When you compare those numbers, we're looking at opening weekend box office numbers for the whole DCEU right here. And I know there's been some confusion. Is this a DCU movie, a DCEU? It's essentially a hybrid. James Gunn says that they would like to continue with Blue Beetle in the DCU, but we know when this movie was made, as well as was made as part of the DCU. Take a look at these numbers. You throw out Wonder Woman and the Suicide Squad, which opened during COVID while theaters were still either closed or opening up, and a same-day release on HBO Max. You can kind of throw those numbers out. But you look at Shazam Fear the Gods is the lowest grossing DCU opening we've ever seen at $30 million. It ended up with a $132 million total run. This is a movie that has a very similar budget to Blue Beetle, and let's be real, probably a similar marketing budget. There's already people making excuses being like, well, Blue Beetle didn't have a lot of marketing. They didn't spend a lot of marketing, so doesn't he make a lot of money? I'm sure they did, because Blue Beetle's had effectively the same amount of marketing that Shazam 2 did. And despite some people claiming Shazam 2 wasn't marketed, they didn't market this movie, it had $100 million worth of marketing. Now, we can be conservative and say $75 million for Blue Beetle. I think that that's fair. I think it's probably in all likelihood more than that, but I think it's fair to say $75 million. You still have $200 million invested in this thing, which means you need to hit almost $400 million at the box office to be profitable. And it doesn't look like Blue Beetle. As of right now, if it keeps on this path that it has with Shazam, it doesn't look like it's going to get anywhere close to that. Even if it had an opening like The Flash $55 million opening, stalled out at $268 million worldwide. Keep in mind, they only get to keep about half of the box office cut from the theaters. That's what the studio actually gets back. So when you're looking at an opening like this, holy shit, they have to be very, very worried. Now, anything can happen. It can have a massive Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Of course it could. It's not necessarily tracking like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it overperforms a little bit and comes in at like 35 million, something like that, because I think they're hopefully relying on a huge Hispanic audience. I watched the movie. You can check out my review over on RK Outpost Live. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think it's the worst thing I've ever seen. A little heavy-handed with a lot of the messaging. But for my thoughts, check out the video. It will be in the pinned comment below. But if it tracks like this and has holds that are anywhere close to what we saw for something like Shazam, you're looking at yet another $100 million disaster for Warner Brothers and for DC. Not a lot of info yet, but the info we have, it's not good news for Blue Beetle. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.